And good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Real Estate Radio Hour, brought to you by Chris Rooney with the Realty House and Andy Prasky with RE/MAX Real Estate Properties. Good morning to you guys and everybody else in the studio.
Good morning,
we filled it up.
You found about 6 people off the street that you brought with. No, not really.
Well, we went to breakfast. Andy's thing is that we meet for breakfast now before we head down here, which is a good thing.
It's a nice plan.
So, so we found a few to come
I'm
with
already
us.
up for 5 hours before the show, so I figured might as well have a good start to the day, right?
Ask me when I had my breakfast on Saturday mornings. Never mind that. It was like last night, I think.
Does it say about the time Chris is going to bed?
Yeah, about that time. Anyway, if you're new to the show, thanks for joining us. And I always like to say at the top of the show, your real estate-related questions are always welcome, either by phone or by text. Before I throw it back to the guys, let me give you our phone number, 651-989-9226. Or you can send a text at 81807. Again, 651-989-9226. Or text us at 81807. What's going on here today?
Well, we got a new year.
It is.
So we're going to talk, maybe kind of just do a little recap of 2012 and then kind of what's new for 2013.
I wonder what we were talking about a year ago as far as the market, you know?
I know what we were talking about. We were talking about, what's going to happen. Is it going to start turning around, or when's it going to start turning around? I think we found that out, didn't we, Andy?
I remember because I constantly listen back to our shows on iTunes. Great, nice plug. Anyway, we were listening back to some of the shows, and we were talking about if we could get another 2 quarters of positive growth, we'd start believing that this isn't just a trend, that we're actually seeing positive. And in the last 5 months, we've seen positive growth in the top, larger 20 cities across the country, and I'm starting to believe it. We're starting to see this positive growth, and hopefully this overflows into the rest of the economy and keeps that plugging away too. So.
Yeah, and I think, coming into this year, a big concern was this whole fiscal cliff thing.
Yep.
And there's a lot to do with that whole thing, and I'm not kind of the political guy but there were some important things in the real estate world that we think that we're going to we're gonna be all right and keep growing, and we know interest rates are going to stay pretty consistent here throughout the year.
Yep.
So there's something that was passed that's continued that was kind of a big concern.
Yeah, the Mortgage Debt Relief Act that got extended for another 12 months for those of you last week that were listening in. So what the good news is there is if anybody that's facing foreclosure or a short sale, and we spent the whole hour almost last week talking about short sales, that this is where you can actually go through the short sale. And the taxation on the gain that you have, a realized gain, which a lot of people don't, understand, is that if you take, for an example, a $100,000 house and you sell it for $50,000 and you owe the bank $100,000, the bank writes off that $50,000, which when they have a write-off, that means you have a gain, so you have a realized gain. In the old days, you used to have to pay taxes on that $50,000, and now that Relief Act is being extended again for another 12 months, which is great news for those of us that are in that situation.
So, go ahead.
That's the thing that, there is people still in the situation. We hear that the shadow inventory is going down, and the foreclosures are kind of, what is it? Something like 45% of the foreclosures are kind of concentrated in 5 states. So it's the shadow inventory is coming down, and that means what's coming into the market, that maybe is a foreclosure. So
if you want to send a phone call to us or text 651-989-9226, text number 81807. Speaking of which, here's one. We are losing our house to foreclosure. What do we do the final day? Leave the house unlocked and walk away?
I get that question a lot, and you don't. But, I mean, typically, Andy deals a lot with foreclosures, and you're usually in contact with that person well before that day ever hits.
Unfortunately, yes. Part of my job has been to work for the banks where we've helped the banks, take over a property. And what happens is there's a transition period where a real estate agent will be contacting you. You're still technically responsible for that house to the end of the redemption period, so you don't want to just leave it open or unlocked. You want to actually show some, I don't say the word responsibility, but stay there as long as you can. And you'll be contacted by a bank representative or by a real estate agent, and then at that point, they will coordinate with you on what your exit strategy will be.
Right, and I'll tell you, I've had people that are at the last day, they have nowhere to go.
Exactly.
And it's the day that they have to be out. Well, in that case, I mean, the bank just doesn't come in and lock the doors and kick you out. They have to. I mean, it goes through a court order to be able to get you out as well.
I was going to say, legally, it becomes their property at that point in time, but you're now a tenant in their property. So what they have to do is they almost have to have a lease agreement with you, or they have to treat you like a tenant and go through the eviction process. So what a lot of banks are doing, instead of going through that expensive, lengthy process, they're offering relocation assistance. A lot of the banks are, not in every situation, but where they call it, in our industry, keys for cash, where you give us the keys, here's a check for, I've seen them up as high as $5,000 to help relocate the family to a safe place.
Right, to relocate. And that, in turn, for doing that for you, that you're going to keep the house in good shape. You're not going to ransack the place and steal the cabinets and take all the light fixtures and that kind of stuff.
It says broom swept ready, where it's like they want that house even to be cleaned. So, it's a fair trade, I believe.
There's a line open for your real estate questions, 651-989-9226. But a lot of folks like to text, 81807, for your text messages. Here's another one. How important are this is a good question, are the following to home selling? Wood floors, stainless appliances, granite countertops, no wood paneling.
Sounds like a stager right there.
You betcha. I
mean, all of those things are big things. A lot of people have wood floors and, might be carpet over it. Whether or not you like it or not in which to live in it, having a new hardwood floor is worth a lot of money. It's worth more than having it carpeted.
Oh, absolutely. It's perception. And that's the thing, is that if you're building, it's kind of like the makeup on the house, if you will, putting those last-minute finishing touches on there to make your house look that much better to the public. And I think it's critical. You see a lot of houses that are being flipped where they'll, for an example, then you talk about wood floors, for an example. Are we talking about hardwood floors? Are we talking about three-quarter solid? Are we talking, engineered? Are we talking laminate? Because that's a broad brush that they paint when they say wood floors. I mean, I think that gets into the details and the price point of the house. I've seen houses sell, kitchens sell houses, no doubt about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is, if you're going to spend money on a house, it's kitchens and bathrooms. And if you look at any of these houses that remodelers are selling, that's exactly where they're putting their dollars, because that's where the best returns come from.
Stainless appliances and solid surface countertops, any type of that. When we talk about no wood paneling, I mean, that's what that gives to people is an immediate. It's an immediate thought of, okay, how old is this house? That's 70s. And if you can get rid of that, that takes their perception off how old the windows are and how old the roof is. But if you leave the wood paneling, that it gets them into that frame.
Well, that's the same thing as I have my to-do list before you list, and one of them is dusting off the utilities, like down the furnace and the water heater. Because if they're dirty, if they're full of dust like everybody's is normally, it gives a perception that they haven't been maintained. And so that's a big part of it too, is, and there are checklists. If anybody else out there listening wants a checklist, I know Chris has a fantastic brochure. I have one too that we'd send out to email you if you want it. And it's just making sure you got all those little things done so that, we've been doing this for a long time. So it's, something to help you out.
And Dana, we got the Cambria folks here too. So there's a lot of changes in 2013. One big one is the HARP program. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, and that's not a bad thing to sell houses too. Is that great countertop, the Cambria countertop? I know it's another issue, but it's.
Well, yeah. Everyone thinks it's granite.
I felt the eyes roll when
it's
I
more
said
of a
granite.
solid.
I had to put a plug in there.
You bet, no problem.
All right, we have to take a break. 651-989-9226, or if you want to text the guys a real estate question, 651-989-9226 or 81807. Back with more of the Real Estate Radio Hour here on 830 WCC.